Good evening. All right, you can speak. Thank you. How is everybody? Well, good. Did you have a good day? Where'd you go for lunch? No, don't tell me that. Home. It's a good place. Did some of you go, as my father used to say, to the Red Onion Hotel? If my mother said something about going out, Dad would say all Dad would say is, let's go to the Red Onion Hotel. And she'd say, shut up, Raymond. No, because the Red Onion Hotel to my dad and his jokes was home. So anyway, all right. Well, it's time to get started. It's good to see you. We're still continuing our series of lessons, and really we could do this for a long, long time. But the series itself is called Blessed Assurance. It's just verses that assure us of great things. And the one we want to study tonight is John 14, verse 27. A lady one time went into her doctor and she wanted to talk to her doctor, and she just kept on talking. And she said, Doc, she said, you got to understand something. And he said, well, what? And she said, she said, I'm just past going. And she just kept on and on and on. And finally he said, well, what's your real problem? She said, I'm just run down. She said, your problem, the doctor looked at her and said, your problem's not that you're run down. Your problem is that you're all wound up. And you need to slow down and you need to understand a little peace. And that's true in life. Life is full of tribulation, full of problems, full of difficulties, full of heartaches, full of hurts, yes. But the world really wants peace. Not just peace between men, but peace within. And it's sad to say that people look for those things in a lot of different places, and they don't find them where they can find them. John chapter 14, verse 27, Jesus said, peace I leave with you, my peace I give unto you. Not as the world gives, do I give to you. Let not your hearts be troubled, neither let it be afraid. John 14 is a great chapter. It's one of those that, to be honest, if we were going to study great chapters of the Bible, it's one of those that I put on my list as far as great chapters of the Bible. It begins, you know it well, let not your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me, right? Begins by talking about heaven. And as it talks about heaven, then he talks about Jesus says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. He goes on down, you go on down, he talks about some of life's tribulations, but he talks about then howbeit the Spirit of truth will come and he'll guide you into all truth, and that he's going to send the Comforter. He's going to send the Spirit of God. And then he gets down to the last part and he talks about peace. Boy, what a great chapter. But as he talks about it in John 14, verse 27, it's interesting to look at the verse itself and to see what he talks about. Evidently, there were those in maybe his own inner circle that were dealing with inner demons, dealing with inner problems, dealing with what was going on inside themselves, and they wanted some peace. Maybe Jesus knew that Judas was having problems. Because think about it, this is on Thursday before Jesus dies on the cross on Friday. So the apostles that are there that Jesus is talking to, there's probably some, not just Judas, but others, that are saying, got problems, upset. And remember, the tension was there. They knew that first of all, they knew they had come back to Jerusalem. And they knew when they came back to Jerusalem, Thomas told Jesus in John the 11th chapter, he says, if you go back, they're going to kill you. And he says, let's go. Thomas says, what does he say? He says, let us also go that we may die with him. And they felt the pressure once back in Jerusalem. They felt the pressure of the fact that, oh, wait a minute, these people really are out to get him. And so Jesus wants to leave them with some words of comfort, some words of reassurance. And he leaves them with these words. Peace. Peace is the absence of conflict. Peace is the absence of conflict not based upon outside circumstances. You might say, well, that's a fancy definition, but what does it mean? It means that you're at ease. You're at ease with life. You're at ease with what's going on. And it's not based upon the influence of something outside of you. Peace, Jesus said, I leave with you. I'm leaving it behind. I'm giving it to you. Notice that he then says, my peace. Not a peace, not some peace, not a piece of the world, but my peace. Personal pronoun, my peace. Peace that Christ can give. Only the peace that Christ can give. My peace, he says, I give to you. Not as the world. Well, when you stop and think about it, the world can't give it. Jesus being, as Isaiah said in Isaiah chapter 9 and verse 6, wonderful counselor, mighty God, everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Now, there is some discussion. Isaiah 6, is it referencing something else other than Jesus? And that's not a discussion that we're going to have here. We're going to apply it as most apply it, that it does apply to Jesus. The Prince of Peace says, I'm going to give you my peace, but not like the world. The world has tribulation. The world has strife. The world has upheaval. The world has all of these problems that constantly are boiling up. It's like boiling water. You ever watch boiling water? I've watched more boiling water within the last 2-3 weeks because I've been trying to help Suzanne in the kitchen. And so I watched boiling water, and she put me in charge one night of doing spaghetti. I learned, don't fill the pot too full the first time because you'll be pouring out some, or it's going to be all over your kitchen. Ours was all over the kitchen, by the way. We steam cleaned the kitchen. That's the way I looked at it. But anyway, it was all my fault. It was. But anyway, when you watch a pot of boiling water, the water just keeps turning over and over and over and over and over. And there's a lot of folks that's the way their life is. Not just folks that are in the world, but Christians. They're living that life, and it's just that constant turmoil. It's that constant worry, that constant fret, that constant turmoil in their life. And Jesus says, I'm going to give you peace. Can you do it? Sure. Why? Because God's the God of peace. Romans 15 and Romans 16, Paul uses the same phrase with reference to God. God of peace. Peace I give, not as the world gives, give I unto you. And then he says, let not your hearts be troubled. Well, that carries you back to the first verse of this chapter. Don't be troubled. Don't let your hearts be troubled. Don't let your hearts be over angst with things going on. Don't let it be afraid. That's where we are tonight. I want that peace. I want that peace that passes all understanding. I want that peace that is within. That peace that allows Christians to smile as the world seemingly around them is going up in turmoil. That peace that allows them to be calm in the midst of chaos. That peace that allows them to say, it's okay, it's all right. As we try to function in life the very best we can. And so Jesus says, here's the peace that I offer to you. The peace that I offer to you is a peace, first of all, that's offered to you when you face the darts of Satan. Satan works, doesn't he? Satan is alive, and Satan is well, and Satan works. He is the prince of this world. He's the prince of the power of air, the spirit that now works in the children of disobedience, Paul said in Ephesians chapter 2. That's Satan. Satan is the one that tempts man. He tests man. He uses our own weaknesses. James reminds us in James chapter 1 that every man is tempted when he is drawn away of his own lust and enticed. His own, not somebody else's. What's his weakness? His problems. The devices that he uses are quite simple. He uses every tool within the book. He uses discouragement. He uses hate. He uses anything that he can to drive man to do his bidding. He uses false teachers. He uses those that will teach things that are not, as Matthew 15 says, are of sound doctrine. And as he uses those tools and those tricks and those teachers to get man to follow him, Paul would say, we know him. We know his strategy. His strategy applies to all of us. Ephesians 6, his strategy is simple. And so Paul says we're not ignorant of his devices. 2 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 11. We know how he works. But God gives us the whole armor, doesn't he? The armor that when you look at Ephesians chapter 6 and it talks about the helmet of salvation and the breastplate, the shield of faith and the sword of the Spirit, feet shod with preparation of the gospel. You see a soldier that is completely outfitted from head to toe, top to bottom. You see a soldier that's ready to go to war. He's ready to fight. He's ready to stand up, and he's ready to stand up against the devil. And so James would write, "Blessed is the man that endures temptation. For when he is tried, he shall receive the crown of life, which the Lord has promised to him that love him." James says, endure it. Live it. Keep it up. Well, I don't know if I can do that. Oh, yeah. Yes, you can. Why? Because of what Paul wrote in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 12. Wherefore, let him that thinks he stands take heed lest he fall. Wait a minute. Paul just wrote for us that there's a possibility that you might fall, and so you need to take heed lest you fall. Keep reading the next verse. That next verse is that wonderful promise that God's faithful, who will not allow you to be tempted above what you are able, but will with temptation provide a way of escape, that you may be able to bear it. What a great promise. We talked about that one not long ago. See, when faith Satan's darts, the Lord says, I've got you. I've got you. I'm here to help you. You get through them. I'm here to make sure that you're fit for service. You're fit to fend off whatever he throws at you. And not be his servant, but be one that stands in his way. And so you see, if we're dealing with the problem of how are we going to face Satan, and can we face Satan? And if that turmoil is within us, the Lord says, I've answered it. I've answered him. But then peace that Jesus offers is a peace that comes when life's worries come along. I'm not asking for a show of hands, but I'm going to ask a rhetorical question. How many of you worry? Now, there's a difference between worry and thinking or forethought. Here's the difference. Little or none. No, not true. Forethought, considering something beforehand, thinking about it and thinking it through is one thing. Worrying is about where it consumes you to the fact that that's all you think about. You get up in the morning, you think about it. You get up you're up all day long, and that's all you think about. And it's constantly tearing you up inside. That's worry. That's an oversimplification, but that's worry. And in Matthew chapter 6, verse 25, 30, and 34, you know what Jesus says? Don't worry. Don't worry. Preacher, that's easier said than done. Maureen was a wonderful lady, in my opinion. She was a very servant of God. In the congregation where I preached, she sat about 3 rows back right over there by the wall. She didn't bother anyone. She came in. Congregation, everybody. But every so often I'd get a call. I'd see him. So, Paul, you need to talk to me. I'm worried. You know I'm just a worry wart. You know I just worry all the time. We'd have to talk her through it. Worry is a real part of life. And you say, well, you know, I know it's wrong, but I can't help it. I got that. Understand that. But worry should cause us to trust God. You see, when we've got something that's on our heart and in our minds and is consuming our thoughts, it should be carried before the very throne of God. You know, the peace that passes all understanding that keeps our hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. You know what Paul said to do with it? Or where you get it from? To pray. Pray to God. To carry it to God, let God who has that peace, let Him give it to you. Let Him show it to you. Let Him teach you. See, we're consumed, and think about often what we're worried about. We're often worried about the material things. And let's once again, let's understand that it's all right to think about, and it's all right to plan your financial future. It's all right to go out and make plans and to work that plan, to make that work. It's all right to be concerned about the fact that you have $5 coming in this month, but you have 10 going out. And it's all right to be concerned about loved ones that are sick and hurting, and you want them to have relief, and you want their misery to be ended, but you want it to be ended from the standpoint of them being well. And you worry about the fact that there's several things in your house that are probably about to break, about to tear up. And on and on and on you go. And if it's not one thing, it's another. And a lot of times when we begin to worry, what do we begin to do? We begin to worry, and then we begin to worry about worry. We begin to worry what we're worrying. Why are we worrying? I think it's part of human nature. And so if you are a worrier, now understand, like I say, think about those things, and worry are two different things. But if you're a worrier, understand, trust in God. God will give you the peace. Why? Because here's what He said, Matthew chapter 6, verse 34. Take no thought for tomorrow will take thought for itself. Sufficient is the days, the evil thereof. Jesus said, just live today. Just live today. Now, if you go back to Matthew chapter 6, that classic text on work, Jesus talks about how that the birds of the air, how they toil not, or how that they gather into barns, and yet you're of more value than they. How that the lilies of the field, how they grow. They toil not, neither do spin, and yet Solomon, in all of his glory, not arrayed like one of these. In other words, you're important to God. God's going to take care of you. Well, I just don't see it, and I can't see it, and I can't figure out how He's going to do it. I got you. You know why? Because sometimes I have those thoughts. I don't see how it's going to work out. You ever put together a jigsaw puzzle? Suzanne puts together some every once in a while. I don't like them. I don't even like for her to put them together. You know why? Because there's always a piece missing. And there's always a piece on the floor. And it sits around for 2 or 3 weeks, and every time I walk by it, I want to figure out how to put it together. And I just don't like them, to be honest. Now, if you like them, that's fine, good. There's nothing wrong with them. But those jigsaw puzzles, eventually all the pieces get put back together. And then if it's complete, beautiful. It's a beautiful picture. Matter of fact, if you go into my office and look over to the outside wall, there is a jigsaw puzzle. It's of Noah's Ark and animals. I did not do it, by the way. You know, I told you about Marshall? He did that. Left it in my office one day. Actually, he got it fixed to leave in my office. He never did tell me about it for 3 or 4 weeks. I knew where it'd come from. And sure enough, Marshall fessed up. That's a very special jigsaw puzzle that I'll keep a treasure for as long as I can. But life is like a jigsaw puzzle. With God's help, He'll fit all the pieces together. And so the peace comes in the midst of our worries and cares of life, but the peace of the Lord also when we face great challenges. Well, we face a lot of great challenges, don't we? We talked about some of them just now. When you think about challenges, we have challenges really all the time. From the time we're born to the time we die, we have challenges. The baby has a challenge. You might say, baby doesn't have a challenge. Sure he does. Baby wants to get changed and fed, right? That's his challenge or her challenge. As we grow older, challenges. School-age children, challenges. What's called homework. Well, they don't do that anymore. No, they don't. They don't do homework. Nah, they don't do homework. Homework's when you stay at home and do it for 5 or 6 hours. That's what we had to do as a kid because we walked uphill both ways, in snow. The reality of it is, though, is that a school-age child faces challenges, homework. But then as you get up, college kids, man, you know, they got to get out, got to get a job, got to pay for schooling, got to go to, get a house. Then as you get on up, closer to our age, I'm looking around, yeah, our age, retirement. Do I have enough to last me till I pass? Do I have enough this month to meet my bills? That's a challenge. Life has challenges. And there's always something that comes up, right? Right? Man, we've had 3 good months, and all of a sudden the dishwasher breaks down. So you think, well, that's all right. And you go out and get a new dishwasher. And about the time the installer comes and installs the dishwasher, guess what? You got the dryer going and you hear it go clink, clink, clunk. And then by the time it gets through, you get one of those. You say, well, okay, I can cover that. And then by the time it gets done, the roof starts leaking. You think, there's no way. Life has its many challenges. But the peace that God offers is, look, you have those challenges, but you need to know this. You need to know that God is the God of all peace. Paul said it best in Philippians chapter 4, verse 13, I can do all things through Christ that strengthens me. Let not your life be full of covetousness, but be content with the things that you have, Hebrews 13, verse 5. Well, how in the world was the Hebrew writer able to say that? Don't let your life be with covetousness, be content with such things you have. Because of what he says next. He quotes from the Old Testament. He quotes about God. I'll never leave you nor forsake you. I'm there for you. God's promise is I'm always there for you. God's promise is you're going to get through it. It doesn't matter what it is. God's going to carry you through it if you'll allow him to. Oh, you can work on your own, but I'd rather work with God, hadn't you? I'd rather let God help me. And so the peace is God says, I'm going to get you through it. The peace that Christ offers is just that. I'm going to help you when faced with life's greatest challenges. I'm going to help you with the fears that you have. There are many different fears. There are thousands of fears that are listed in psychology books. Thousands. You might say, no. Oh, yeah, thousands of fears. And we're afraid of everything from numbers to spiders to mice to snakes to people to air. You might say, people are afraid of air. Yeah, some are. And on and on and on and on and on you can go. We're afraid of everything. And if you don't believe it, just read the psychology books. Because you know what psychology really is? And I studied psychology some. Psychology really is giving a label to everything that we do. That's how it is. And figuring out how to work through it. Well, there's a lot of fears that we have. A lot of phobias. But God, who's God of all peace, Jesus, who's the Prince of Peace, says, I want you to have peace. And while the psalmist would say in Psalm 118, verse 6, the Lord's on my side, I shall not fear. What can man do to me? You see, fear drives us. In Matthew chapter 25, both talents, 5 talents, 2 talents, 1 talent, right? You remember the story. One's given 5, one's given 2, one's given 1. Each man according to his ability. When they come and give a report back, the 5-talent man's gained 5 talents. Why? Well, he put it to use. The 2-talent man has gained 2 talents. Why? Because he's put it to use. 1-talent man brings back his 1 talent. Now we can commend him for bringing back his 1 talent. We can commend him because he has that which he's given. But the master doesn't. But listen to what he says. Why did you just bring back the 1 talent? I was afraid. And I went and I hid my talent. You did what? I went and I hid my talent. I went and hid my piece of money. I didn't do anything with it. Well, why didn't you do anything with it? I was afraid. Well, you should have done something with it. I was afraid. You should have taken it and put it to use. I was afraid. Fear stops us. Fear causes us to do things that we otherwise wouldn't do. Fear is really, as someone used the word as an acronym, fear is false emotions appearing real. That's what fear is. And so the Lord promises, I'm going to be with you. I'm going to help you through. I'm going to carry you. And so all I ask is you go back. Remember what we studied weeks so ago, Psalm 23. The Lord's my shepherd, I shall not want. Makes me to lie down in green pastures. Leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Remember those words, and the peace that the Lord offers will come to you. But then also there's the peace when guilt piles up. Guilt comes, doesn't it? Guilt comes. Why? Because of things that we do, and we can't resolve them in our own mind. We understand that God is a forgiving God, and that as far as the east is from the west, that's how far God removes our sins from us. That God casts them in the sea, Mike says, so that you'll see them no more. We understand God's forgiveness, and we understand God's forgiveness is complete. But sometimes we can't forgive ourselves. Sometimes we're like old Cain, right? My punishment is greater than I can bear. The guilt gnaws on us. Now, I've talked to, in 38 years of ministry, there's no telling how many people I've talked to, and this is one of their issues. And that's fine. I mean, it is part of life. I try to help them deal with it. Understand that God forgives. Understand that God's forgiveness is complete. But understand that you are to forgive yourself. If God forgives you, then why can't you forgive yourself? Well, I can't because I did it. Yeah, you did it. But did you make it right? Sure. Did you repent of it? Sure. Did you tell people that were engaged in the sin that you committed against them? Did you tell them what you did and what you did was wrong? Yeah. What else can you do? Well, nothing. I've made it right with God. I've made it right with the individuals, the fellow man. There's nothing to do. So let's put a peg down. Let's just put a period right there in that chapter of our life. Let's understand that chapter is done. It's finished. We can't go back. Let's move forward. Let's forgive ourselves. Let's let it go. And that peace that passes all understanding helps us. And so, as the beloved psalmist in Psalm 51, David, when he is feeling the guilt of the actions with Bathsheba and with her husband, remember what he asked God? Create in me a clean heart, O God. Renew right spirit within me. Create a clean heart. And so the guilty person understands that God can and God will create a clean heart. And there's a peace that says, okay, I can let it go. Why? Because God's given me his forgiveness. Now, let me tell you, none of these are easy. And if you're stuck on one of these, I get it, and you get it as well. It's one of those things we have to work at. Because when you get down to it, here's what it's based on. It's based on one simple principle. Faith. I got great faith. No, you've got a faith in God, but do you have a faith that comes from God? You see, you trust in the fact that God exists, but do you trust in the fact that God will work for you? It's a difficult proposition. I'm not laying this on you and say, this is the way it's got to be. this is something I think all of us have to work on. But if we do, there's the promise. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give unto you, not as the world give I unto you. We want that peace, don't we? Nicholas Ridley, in 1555, was condemned for something that he did that he said he didn't do. He said he was an innocent man. He claimed his innocence. He was going to be executed the next day, and so they were going to allow him certain liberties. And so Nicholas Reinl's brother asked if he could come and spend the night, the last night, with his brother and keep him calm. The folks in that area thought that that would be all right, but Nicholas told his brother, he said, don't come. He said, I'm an innocent man. They know I'm innocent, but I also know I'm innocent. But I plan on going to sleep tonight and sleeping like I do every other night, and I'll wake up in the morning and they'll execute me. But it'll be all right. That's a real hard proposition, isn't it? There's that faith in God, that trust in God. That while the wicked are like the sea, Isaiah 57:20 says, the wicked are like the sea. Those waves cast up dirt and mire. The peace that God offers is the stilling and the calming of the sea, the calming of the heart and the mind. It says, just trust me, and I'll get you through it. This evening, if you're not a New Testament child of God, or you need to rededicate your life, won't you come? While together we stand and sing.